When it comes to feeling our feelings, the intense visceral effect of negative emotions, such as anger, are pretty hard to conjure up when we are not in those actual states. That's because feelings like anger are not based in reason or thought. They are deep feeling and emotional reactions. Today I explore why anger leads to confrontation, which inevitably leads to regret, and why we have a tendency to lean away from anger versus processing it. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Live Mindfully with Laurie Moore, the podcast that invites us all to slow down, take a deep breath, and show up as the most mindful, wholehearted versions of ourselves that we can each day. Today's podcast is on anger and negative emotions in general, but a big focus on anger. And we all feel anger, and anger, I think I can best sum this up with an example of my daughter right now. My daughter is 6, and at the moment she is really quick to anger, and it rises within her, and her first reaction is, I don't want to feel this way. And I think we can all appreciate and understand. We know that feeling, right? And I could take her through a calming exercise. I mean, it's what I do. It's what I do for work. But personally, I don't feel that's helpful. So instead, we sit down. And I just want to say, I feel at the moment I am doing this between 3 to 6 times a day. So we sit down and she tells me what it feels like in her body. And we talk about that. I'm like, where is the anger? Where do you feel it right now in your body? And what does it feel like? And it's always a terrible feeling. It's one of the descriptor words that she uses. It feels terrible. And then we explore why we feel so angry right now. And she usually starts to scream at that point, and there's lots of crying, and there's a big release. Most of us weren't taught how to process anger, and so we avoid it. We don't want, and a lot of the time we don't have the time to sit down and scream and cry. And particularly for me, when I'm in a state of calm and control, I always believe I will manage myself so much better when those emotions come up, that I won't let them override my system, that I will have control of them, that I will be able to remain calm. But boy, oh boy, when I am really angry about something that has been festering for months and I've been pushed to my limit, I will move toward confrontation really quickly, and my wrath is my undoing, and all of my hard work of trying not to be angry. And of course, shortly after this, I feel immense regret. I've let myself down. I've let those around me down, and all of this work I've done over the course of the last 10 to 20 years is undone. And then I feel shame, and it spirals. So according to the Better Health Channel, negative feelings such as hate, jealousy, anger, and sadness stop us from thinking and behaving rationally and seeing situations in their true perspective. And as a result, when these emotions present, we tend to not only see what we want to see, our minds, unfortunately, only remember select things, usually what the other person did and said that led to us feeling this way. Our minds have this uncanny ability to kind of block out the role we played in these settings, but our nervous system doesn't. And that's why we tend to feel terrible, because deep down, certainly deep within the body, we know we didn't show up as our best, most mindful selves. And this, of course, prolongs the anger or the grief or the sadness. And when we are really fixated on something that makes us feel angry or sad or jealous, this prevents us from enjoying life. And the longer this goes on, the more set the problem becomes. And in actual fact, the more addicted our bodies become to that feeling, because it becomes ingrained and so well known within the body. And it becomes habitual. And we all know that saying, better the devil we know, right? And the body kind of lives by that motto too. When it knows anger and its process, its learned habit is to store it, it knows how to do that much quicker. So we think we're handling it better. We're not really. We've just become better at avoiding it. Unfortunately, when the anger feels like it can no longer be contained, that's usually what drives us to confront a situation. And the dictionary meaning of confrontation is a hostile or argumentative situation. You can't have a confrontation that isn't born from a place of strong emotion. You can't have a rational confrontation, because rationale doesn't exist within the confines of a confrontation. You can have a rational disagreement, but confrontation is born from conflict. And we often have made assumptions when we come into a confrontation, and we have strong negative feelings that are driving that need to confront. Now, anger is interesting because it really is a fantastic emotion. I have come to love anger, and it's because I really understand its purpose now and how it serves me. And again, according to the Better Health Channel, when we feel anger in the body, our adrenal glands flood the body with stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. The brain shunts blood away from the gut and towards the muscles in preparation for physical exertion. Heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration increase. The body temperature rises and the skin perspires. And what is actually happening internally and externally, we can feel all of that. We know that's happening, and it happens in a split second. So why does the body do this? Because anger tells us we need to take action to put something right. And our physiological response, the response from the body, is to give us the strength and energy we need so that we can act. But most of us, because we haven't been shown how to feel, express, and then calm that anger positively, many of us do a couple of different things. Many of us chandelier, as Brené Brown calls it. We bottle it up until we explode. Or we hate the feeling of anger so much, we suppress it. We really suppress it. We pretend we aren't really angry. We rationalize it. And the problem with both of these scenarios is anger is such a strong emotion that if this is done long enough, it will start to manifest in a myriad of other ways. Usually and most obviously in the body. It begins to present as low-grade inflammation, as aches and pains. It manifests as injury, and slowly and over a long time, eventually it will present as chronic illness. Now, that's not to say that all aches and pains, all chronic illness, all low-grade inflammation is caused by this, although there are some theories and research that say otherwise. But for me, I think sometimes the odds feel so stacked against my wellness and my joy and my desire to live a good life and be a good person that the last thing I want to do is harbor anger in my body and store it if I don't have to. And this goes for all the negative emotions, and I decided to look this up as a little exercise for this episode. There are 36 positive emotions and 43 negative. Now, that's not a big difference, but the negative emotions outweigh the positive. And I feel pretty confident in saying that I believe the majority of us are more capable of naming a higher percentage of negative emotions versus positive ones. And I believe that that would be the case for me as well. And I don't know the science behind that, but my feeling sense is that we are more attuned to the negative emotions, because when we look at the spectrum of pleasure at one end and pain at the other, as a species, we tend to try to avoid pain as opposed to seeking pleasure. And not just any kind of pleasure, not something that makes us feel good in the moment, but the positive pleasure that leads to long-term health and wellness. Pleasure that actually leads to honoring ourselves and feeling really good about who we are in the long term. So instead of fixating on that, we work on a model of avoiding pain. And as The Secret says, and the famous James Redfield quote, energy goes where attention flows. And for a lot of us, because we're avoiding pain, we end up in a pain spiral anyway. So I guess at this point the question becomes, well, then what do? We don't want to store negative emotions in the body. We don't want anger to turn into confrontation, which turns into regret, which is probably, again, stored in the body. Most of us, depending the circumstance, aren't great at genuinely apologizing. You know, we can apologize, but in the back of our minds, we are thinking, well, if you hadn't done this and you hadn't done that, this never would have happened. And if we go back to the beginning of the episode where I spoke about we don't accurately remember the part that we played. So there are a couple of techniques that I have either independently learned or been shown over the years, and the ones that work, the ones that are really effective, require you to express that emotion. And I know that this is going to be difficult for you to wrap your mind around, but this is one of the reasons why I really love anger, because you can make this fun. I mean, that kind of maybe makes me sound like a bit of a narcissist, but you want to make it fun. You really do. You need to move through that emotion, and you need to express it so that you don't store it. And so one of the techniques that I was taught about 3 or 4 years ago now is you get a soft baseball bat or a soft cricket bat and a really firm pillow, and you scream every negative, hateful, hurtful, disgusting thought that comes into your mind. Whether it is rational or not, remember, anger is not rational, so it does not need to make sense. And you beat the pillow as hard as you can, because remember, you have the adrenal glands pumping the body with adrenaline and cortisol. You have the brain shunting the blood toward the muscles for physical exertion. Your body is doing everything it can to prepare you for a fight. So saying those things and releasing that anger in this way means you will never have to say those things in a confrontation. It won't get to a confrontation. And the best part is we know how to store anger in the body. We are already doing that. So if you are not in a position right in that moment to pull out that soft bat and that pillow, your body will carry that emotion until you are. We all know that feeling where we say, it happened last week, but I'm so angry about it. So make a time to do this practice, to make a time to release that anger. And what that really means is that when you are feeling a little bit calmer, you might be able to have the conversation with the person that needs to be had, but it will not be a conversation fueled by that anger, which is what a confrontation is. The other technique I use, and I use this one probably more often, mainly because my husband and the kids broke my soft cricket bat. And I haven't bought another one. I'll add that to the to-do list for this week. Before I move on, if you are scared to do the pillow one alone, if you're scared to do it alone because you feel like it might open up a can that can't be closed, or it might open up Pandora's box. Do this with a really close friend or a family member or your therapist. It is not uncommon for therapists to recommend this kind of a practice in any case. So do it with a witness so that you have someone there to support you. And I will also say that feeling that you get after screaming the most disgusting things that you have ever heard yourself say about someone or something, and hitting that pillow, that release that you get, you know what? It's better than the greatest sex you've ever had. It is such a good feeling. It feels so good in the body. But the other one that is also available to us, and maybe more available throughout the everyday, is similar, but instead of screaming these things into the ether, we scream them into our laptop or onto a piece of paper. So we use journaling or writing as the modality to get those feelings out of the body. Very important, destroy or delete the evidence when you are done, because we don't want that stuff read by someone else. But that methodology, that technique, it gets it out of you, and it gets you to safely say everything you want to say, everything mean and nasty that you don't want to say to the person. You don't want that to accidentally spill out of you when you've just taken that final hit and you can't take any more. But we do need to do something, and calmly counting back from 10 or pretending it's not there or rationalizing our way out, it doesn't work. The mind might think so, but the body keeps a record of this stuff. A very popular book that circulates through medical circles is Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. And that book is all about what I am talking about here today. So, some food for thought. Maybe save this episode, and the next time you feel anger rising in the body, re-listen and try one or both of the techniques out and see how you feel after. But it gives us options other than chandeliering, other than storing this emotion in the body, which will manifest eventually as something else. I want to thank you so much for listening. Please help me spread the word of the Live Mindfully podcast with your friends and family and across your socials. I wish you a wonderful week. I'll be back again next week with another great episode. Until then, take good care of yourself.